Sadly, Mob Psycho's not today because I could not get Chris K. Son in time for this weekend's Kirblog. So here's one on Tiger and Bunny. Yeah, so if you didn't get that, unfortunately, Chris Cason was not available. He was super busy working on a new show. And he sends his regards. But hopefully we'll still be doing a Mob Psycho Kirblog at some point, if not during Animepril. Perhaps at some point within May or maybe later. I don't know if there's any sign yet about when the Blu-ray release is going to be or anything. I have no idea. But I wanted to do something still, and I tried looking into a couple backup options. And I happen to have, in my backlog of Kirblog questions, I have an answer. Let me even double-check when I got this one originally. Got this submitted over Tumblr, over a year ago, January 2015, from lordgamermon. I just got finished with the anime series Tiger and Bunny and found many similarities between that series and Tome in terms of its characters. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on the series, if you've seen it at all. I have indeed. I believe I watched the show all the way back in, I think in 2013 when the show was first coming out in the U.S. Viz Media put it out. I remember, I think it was... interested in it initially because it was the first new union anime dub that I'd seen in a while. Had a few people in there that I had, like Steve Bloom and guys like that I hadn't heard doing anime in a very long time. And I remember seeing the character designs a lot at, I think at Kinokuniya, which was, it's this Japanese like bookstore and toy shop and stuff like that. They have a bunch across the country. And there's one in New York that I would go to a lot that had a lot of merchandise of the characters. And that was kind of actually before I checked out One Punch Man and then also got really big into My Hero Academia. I think this was the first like American superhero-esque Japanese show, like an anime that with like very much more like Western style superheroes type of concept that I'd ever seen. I remember really thinking the character designs were cool looking. I didn't know much about what the story was or anything. I just knew that Kotetsu and Barnaby were the two main characters. I was seeing them around everywhere and a lot of the other heroes and stuff. So that got me interested. And I marathoned through the show. If I'm remembering right, I think it was back in 2013 at some point. So it was before I moved out here. And it's been a while, obviously, since then. But to refresh myself, I did also recently watch the two movies, which were Tiger and Bunny, The Beginning, and Tiger and Bunny, The Rising. But I guess to start with just kind of general sort of things about it. In kind of refamiliarizing myself with the world and the characters and everything, conceptually, I really, really liked this show. Visually, I really enjoyed it. It didn't quite go down as like one of my favorites of all time, but I remember at the time that I was watching through it, I really grew to like it a lot. That said, in my refamiliarization, I really think that what made the show more than anything really was more than any other thing or even character or any part of the plot at all was Kotetsu himself, was Wild Tiger. Very different kind of protagonist that was very refreshing to me at the time. Not that it was, again, that long ago or whatever, but this is one of the first series I think I'd seen in a good long time where the main character wasn't a really young person. I forget exactly how old Kotetsu is supposed to be, but obviously, hapless dad age with his daughter and everything. And so that in and of itself was very refreshing to see just a new protagonist like that. And Kotetsu is a very adorable. I actually think for a dad figure type of thing, despite the fact that it seems like Reigen is more popular than him. This coming from me, I actually like Kotetsu as a character a lot more. I think because he is genuinely a dad, so he has that kind of like sensitivity going for him, and also, despite him being a screw up, like he's much more of actually a good person. It's almost like if Reigen were actually a dad, and if he had like Midoriya's sense of justice and everything. And I remember Barnaby at first. Obviously, of course, I love Yuri Lowenthal, but Barnaby, I think I wasn't quite sold on right away. Of just like, he's kind of just the stoic, like, whatever. But he kind of, in the beginning, he always started out as a good foil to Kotetsu. But I think that he stood the test of time in terms of the whole show, and that he actually had a lot more depth to him than I think I was originally thinking. And certainly the beginning movie was not a good indicator of that. He's just kind of a dick throughout most of that. But yeah, well, I definitely think that Kotetsu was more of an interesting character overall. I think that definitely the namesake of the show, Tiger and Bunny, were like the biggest thing about the show that I really enjoyed overall. Because, while the cast of characters were, fine for what they were, honestly, the rest of the cast wasn't terribly interesting, which I really hate to say that because they have like great designs, cool powers, they make for, again, conceptual. That's why I say conceptually, I like the show. I think looking back on it a lot more than I enjoyed the full progression of the story itself. Because like the episode plots were fine. Like it certainly wasn't a like underwhelming show. It was still very exciting. The fight scenes were super cool. Even past the designs themselves. Like actually, in my opinion, one of the few I don't know how many people agree with this necessarily, but one of the few decent meldings of 2D and 3D animation that I've seen in anime anyway, because I liked a lot of the not only the design but also the method of movement with the CG models for the characters that had like really detailed suits like that. I think the only one that kind of looked a little weird was Fire Emblem's suit, because he was you could still see his flesh in the mouth area, which sounds really dirty. But the rest of him was CG, and he seemed a little more out of place. And granted, also even having Dragon Kid and Blue Rose also be the only ones that weren't CG animated was a little inconsistent. Wasn't in love with that either. And of course, because they're the girls, and we have to not even remotely try to hide their identities. They don't even have masks on. It's like, okay, whatever. And I guess on that note, I'll get into this sort of negative point. I really wanted to like all of the other hero characters, and there were definitely elements of them that I tried to latch onto, but unfortunately, they're pretty bland. I feel like most of them, just because they didn't really get to live up to their potential too much, like there just wasn't really a lot that they did with them. Regrettably, the one that bums me out the most is like Blue Rose, who's like probably has the most amount of screen time of all the few amount of female characters in the show. She is really not great. She's very like mean-spirited and like stereotypical, and like, oh, surprise, she gets a crush on Kotetsu, and she's super fan servicey all the time, and she sings, and it's like, all right, great. It's like another disappointing ice elemental character that makes me sad, unfortunately. So not big on her. Rock Bison is cool. He just didn't get to say a whole lot. Origami Cyclone really didn't get to say fucking anything, which was kind of the whole joke with him, but he really was just kind of like, I'm here too. Dragon Kid, same kind of thing. She's just like, I'm here. Like that's the problem, is like a lot of the other characters, they just seem so like, and even, well, I'll get to Fire Emblem because I actually want to get to him a little bit later when I talk about the movie. But I did like Sky High. I like his very, to kind of address the question of, no, I did not take really many inspiration from this for tone necessarily, but I remember when I was watching, I definitely thought Sky High and Nylok would get along. That very big, bombastic kind of personality. I did also remember, because each of them kind of got their own episode, and I remember really liking his episode where he meets the girl with like the white hair who turned out to be like an android or something. That was really cute. I like that a lot. And also like some of them I think that were meant to be mysterious. Like Lunatic was very much meant to be like this chaotic, neutral, mysterious kind of character with very limited use, and he got some very cool scenes which I think worked for him perfectly fine. As far as the supporting cast goes, I think what was a good strong point was that most of the villains were actually really cool. Even the kind of monster of the, well, not monster of the week, but bad guy of the week type guys that were just kind of like, I have a cool power and I'm wacko or whatever. Not the Animaniac, just they're wacky. Were cool. Even like I was reminded from watching the beginning movie where they have Tony, who's the little kid that has the ability to control inanimate objects and make them move around and shit. Like he actually turned out to be kind of cool, so I was happy that they used him again for that movie, even though the rest of that was kind of meh. Although the movie actually had that kind of cool, like I think Baxter was his last name, not Stockman, but the guy who could like switch places with people. And then as far as like the major villains, Jake Martinez, hearing Steve Bloom play this very like Manson type character was kind of cool. He had some interesting stuff going on, and then his little assistant girl, Cream, I forget her name, was neat. Very kind of Joker Harley-esque, but with their own kind of flavor. I liked them a lot. The major villain, which I don't really want to spoil, I'll just say that as far as the plot of the overall series goes, without giving away their identity, the last like good chunk of episodes, because it was I think about 25, 26 episodes, that last chunk was made very much worth it by the usage of the villain and their powers. I'll say this because I guess this is without spoiling who they are, but they have a power that is one of the few devices in, at least in like recent anime that I've seen, that really gets me like scared. I'll say that there's a Bleach character. I know, weird example, but there's a Bleach character with a similar power. It's basically like altering the memories of everybody that a central character knows in a way that kind of makes them feel like, or flat out in this case, like the entire world is against them. It's a really terrifying and like very effective kind of, you know, I say device, but I mean that kind of sounds like it's a bad thing, but it was really effective, and especially with how they went about it during like this big kind of overarching final battle and everything. And there's a kind of a cool twist with like a misleading of who the villain is and etc. And like, you know, why it affects the character that it does and everything. It's really cool. If anything, I feel like that, you know, not that I wasn't enjoying the show on a full sense, but that last bit really made the entire journey through the whole thing very much worth it. And then I guess actually to kind of jump ahead, so I had not seen any new Tiger and Bunny stuff in a very long time. So I watched these two movies in the last day or so just to prepare for this Kirblog once I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get Cason. So while the beginning movie, which I was kind of expecting to just be kind of like parts of the show surmised, was really actually not that interesting. It's just kind of like, here's a long episode of the show. And again, like the situational like place swapping villain was kind of cool, and like the fights were neat and everything. I feel like it didn't really give a good enough taste of what the characters are all about, and particularly Kotetsu. I feel like it was just kind of like, and Kotetsu and Barnaby collectively didn't really, I think, get across enough of what their whole deal was. But on the other hand, the Rising movie, which I believe takes place after the end of the series, that was really cool because, you know, from a personal sense, getting to come back to these characters again for the first time in really 4 years, I think it's been now, since I originally watched it. That was really cool to jump back into something that takes place after the end of the show. And I remembered a lot of the major events pretty vividly. This was cool. This felt much more like a big spectacular. This is I think what a lot of people often hope for, where like you have a really good series. If you were to do something else after the end of it, it's like, oh, do a movie that's like one more last little, you know, or not little, but sometimes like one more big adventure with these characters and everything. And this absolutely delivered on that. It gave pretty much all of the central characters something cool to do. You know, the fight scenes were phenomenal. The animation, you know, because the animation on the series, Sunrise really did a good job on the visuals for this. Little side note before I keep forgetting this. This show was the first thing that made me think about using colored line art for any time I do animation, which I think, and Andy the Frog, when I did that Bo Burnham animated thing, I think that's a year old by now. Jesus Christ. I did all the line art dark green because that was inspired by Tiger and Bunny's dark red line art, because I thought that was cool. Anyway, yeah, the animation in the Rising movie is even bigger and better than the show, and which is saying something. In fact, even I'll say that there's like a very complicated CG enemy that the characters have to face off against that was actually very well executed, I thought, on that case as well. Yeah, and the story was pretty solid. You know, what I like the most, I think, about the whole journey of Kotetsu in the frame of the story, you know, both throughout the whole show and even in this little ending movie, it deals with some interesting themes of like when you're kind of past your prime, or what other people around you consider to be past your prime. Because like, it's not even that Kotetsu is that old. I think it's just like, for his line of work, it's like, you're the old man, dude. You gotta, you know, clear out for the new generation, because, you know, you're not able to keep up with us. You're not hip. You're not, you know, capable of following what's necessary. Which I think that especially if you're in any kind of career where things are constantly shifting in the way that stuff happens, not just in entertainment, which is often the example that I use, but I think in a lot of different things. If you're not able to evolve with the times, which sometimes just comes down to getting older, like inherently that is a problem, that can really weigh on you. And as your life is changing, in a way that you don't know how to deal with, there's something really heartfelt and powerful, I think, that's about that. And I think that Kotetsu embodied those concepts really, really well. Because it's not even that, like, I don't know if this is necessarily what the intention was, but Kotetsu came off to me as still this very young at heart, goofball type of guy that, continued to do what it is that he loved more than anything. And, but just because of like how everything else around him was changing, and having a character like Barnaby, who's this, not only the cool, new, hip kind of guy that's just like, this lame old guy who's just holding me back from my true potential and everything. But I think the funny thing is that you would almost suspect, like, you could see it's the new kid teaching the old dog how to do new tricks or whatever. Really, what it is Kotetsu kind of rubbing off on Barnaby and kind of teaching him these sort of symbols of justice. It's funny too, because now that I'm even thinking about My Hero Academia, it's almost as if you compared it to that show, it's like if All Might was in Deku's position and Deku was in All Might's position. Like, in terms of the, like, I'm the new one, you're the old generation, and yet, even though you're like the old guard or whatever, you're outdated, and you're even over time, like, he's kind of deteriorating too, just like All Might is in some ways. It's still the old guard that has to, teach the new generation, what's what about justice and how to continue to be what it really is to be a hero. And I think that makes Kotetsu a really, really strong protagonist, and having Barnaby, and kind of in a way almost like more of what the audience character I think would be, that you would identify with more specifically, and having this figure to look up to, I think was a really, really cool, unique. It was the thing about the show that I think still makes it hold the test of time, because again, like, story wise, it's all right. The characters are not incredibly interesting necessarily, like a lot of the other central ones are not that good. I will say though, I was saving him for later, Fire Emblem's presence in, and actually I'll even say the heroes in general, I think, got to be a little bit more interesting and got some fun moments of like camaraderie, and I think I felt a little bit more for them in the Rising movie than I did from most of the episodes that I saw with them in the show. That were like focused on them specifically. But Fire Emblem's stuff that happens in the movie was really, really cool. Like, because previously I was just kind of like annoyed by like, God, this character seems so like exploitive and like almost kind of like, I don't want to say mean-spirited, but just like gay jokes. It's like, great. But I'll just say that they go into a lot of what his struggles are, and you get exactly what his deal is. It's really like heartbreaking and emotional. It's one of the best parts of the movie. It's a small part of the movie, but it's very, very impactful. And his bond with a lot of the other characters, particularly Dragon Kid in that instance, that was a great, great moment. That was something that I loved. In addition to, of course, the main focus, which was Tiger and Bunny themselves. So I guess I've tried to not get super spoilery with it. I will say it's worth checking out. If you like, in fact, I'll even say, since I've talked about a lot of these other kind of, again, American superhero-esque Japanese animated series, if you enjoy My Hero Academia or One Punch Man, stuff like that, I would give Tiger and Bunny a watch if you haven't seen it. I would definitely recommend it. Not one of like my top favorite anime, but definitely something that I think was very unique. Had a lot of really cool style to it, beautiful visuals, great fight scenes, a lot of spectacle to it, and definitely some, at the very least, some really good moments that set it apart from a lot of other stuff that I had seen. This is definitely, I think, one of Sunrise's coolest things. Not relating to Gundam stuff, of course, which So yeah, just wanted to toss in a little quick one to tie us over. Sorry again that we couldn't do Mob Psycho to follow up after One Punch Man, but yeah, thanks for listening to this. Coming up next will be the Hunter x Hunter first 50 episodes, the first like 3 arcs worth of stuff from that series, which I will be doing with Brittany Lauda and Matt Shipman, who are both bigger, longer running fans of the series than I am. So they'll be joining me. I'll be recording that the day before it goes up, which will be next Tuesday, the 25th. And then after that, of course, will be the Tales of Zestiria, the Cross Kirblog with Christian Lamont. So that aside, thanks for listening to this. If you enjoy
And if you have not seen Tiger and Bunny, please go check it out. I would definitely recommend you watch it. If you have, leave your thoughts, comments, agreements, disagreements with my thoughts, etc. Favorite moments, favorite characters, favorite things about the show. Have you checked out the manga? I don't know anything about the manga. If there's any interesting differences worth checking out on there. Any thoughts about the movies compared to the series, etc. Let me know. And look forward to the last couple Animepril Kirblogs before we get out of this month and move on to May. My God, this fucking year is already almost half over. Anyway, all right, thanks a lot. I'll catch you guys on the next one, and fare thee well. Bye-bye.